What's up, everybody? I'm Beck Moore, CEO of Community Action Association of Pennsylvania, and your host today of the Thinking CAAP episode. And with me, one of our favorite co-hosts, Pennsylvania's darling. Welcome, Amanda Hoprich. What's up, Amanda?
Oh, not much. I'm very excited about today's episode and co-hosting, since I'm kind of straddling both worlds here. So new world meets old world. So as we said, we'll introduce our guest, but we're going to put him in the hot seat, as this episode really is around WIPFLI and showcasing some of our work in AI.
So if you're new to the Thinking CAAP, Amanda used to be with CAAP. She was my COO. Worked together for a long time, and then a little over a year and a few months ago, officially, I think, 3 months. I'm going to say 3 months. That's my guess.
Yeah, about that.
Went over to WIPFLI to work there, which I'll make sure to let Ryan talk a little bit about their company and the great work that they do. But Amanda is back and happy to have her. So welcome back, Amanda. And also our guest today, we're here to really talk about AI, particularly AI and human services, which is something that our guest Ryan Peasley has spoken about at our conference in different sessions. I know has traveled the country to also talk about this topic at different times, but we're really at CAAP trying to think about how to approach this topic. Is something that we're having a summit about in the spring, and excited to talk more about that on a future episode. But welcome, Ryan. What's up, man? It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a long time trying to get this scheduled. Finally got it on the books. Appreciate it. Not sure I'm ready for the hot seat yet, but certainly here to share a little bit about AI, a little bit about WIPFLI and how we're helping organizations kind of take on that journey.
Absolutely. So can you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do at WIPFLI? And I know you have quite a large role in all the work that you do and all the different types of work that you cover. So just give our listeners a little bit of context.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit about WIPFLI is, we started as a CPA firm many, many years ago and have, had many iterations. We're almost getting to a point where we're 100 years old now at WIPFLI. And for 50 of those years, we've been helping human service organizations, federally funded human service organizations, whether you're Community Action, Head Start, or other notable federally funded programs. But outside of that space, we also help healthcare organizations, manufacturing, distribution. The list goes on, where we have several different other specialties in industries. And for the last 15 years, I've been helping nonprofit organizations with their various technology strategies. But then also a few years ago, I don't know if you call it promoted or voluntold into a position where I do lead this division at WIPFLI now that specializes in working with federally funded human service organizations, whether that's through audits, financial system implementations, process improvement work, strategy, risk management, HR, technology. The list goes on, right? So here, really focusing on that technology space and AI. I'm sure some conversation around data will go as part of this here today too. So excited to kind of dig in and see what we can do to help organizations kind of start their AI journey or just continue the journey that they're already on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just say, thank you to WIPFLI, because you are a big supporter of CAAPs and an important partner for our success. And so just appreciate the partnership that we've established and continue to grow over the years. So we'll just say shameless plug here for WIPFLI and all the great work that they do.
As the marketing manager, I love that shameless plug. So
we're selective in the organizations we choose to really, partner with. We want other organizations to be innovative and thinking through what's next, not, how do we check the box or keep doing what we've always done. So, CAAP has certainly, wowed me after I've got introduced to y'all and the things that you're doing for your network and the greater Community Action Network as a whole. So certainly appreciate what you're doing too.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, much to my team's chagrin, I like big ideas. So thank you to them who are always dealing with me.
I can attest as a witness to that.
I start out any kind of new hire conversation with just want to be really clear, right? Like, I love strategy and I love ideas. So I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So if you don't like that kind of leader, then this isn't the right place for you. But we have a great team here, and Amanda, we still miss you. All right. So let's get into some of our questions. And I think, we'll kind of back up. We really started probably about a year ago to start, through some discussions with some of our network folks about AI and the importance of, and one of our board members had said that they had gone to a really just wild conference where the red carpet was rolled out. It was not a WIPFLI conference, to be clear. It was a different financial services company who shall remain nameless. And the production value was like bananas. I mean, the swag that they got, it was wild. And what part of a lot of the main learning at that conference was around AI. And she and I were chatting a little bit, and she said, we spend so much time in the work, we just oftentimes don't have the time to really dig into where we can implement these types of tactics, but I know we have to. And that conversation with Aaron has remained on my mind for ever since, and something that we have started to kind of weave in. But this spring, right, as I mentioned before, we're going to be having this AI summit / workplace culture sort of alignment of topics. And I know that within human services, there is so much reduction of administrative burden that can come about when we talk about how to embed AI. But let's start with kind of, right, something that I know is a little bit of a pain point, in that when people in human services hear AI, in quotes, what reactions are you usually seeing, and where do you think those reactions come from? And I know I've seen them too. So,
there's definitely a spectrum of individuals who are super excited and they're trying to force every idea that they have where AI can, be put into a situation or solve a problem. And then there's, the skeptics, and then, a couple of variations of individuals between. Let's say, the skeptics are still very much talking about, hey, we are helping humans. There needs to be this high touch human, component to it. There's, we've got all these emotions that are often involved, and vulnerability of, the individuals we serve that coming in, that to force them to use AI just won't work. Right. Well, I think there's some myths in some of that. That's one of, the end of the spectrum for sure. Then I think between those two, there's this group of organizations that are paralyzed because they don't know what to do. Like, is this, a fad? Is this a real strategy? Yeah. And I don't know what to do. I don't know if I have the internal capacity to take this on, and I don't know who could help me take this on either. So there's so many questions that it's overwhelming for them to answer those questions that they just don't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're not comfortable, so as someone who affectionately gets called pop-up in the team from time to time, thank you, Amanda, for coining that. It all started with a conversation about bookmarks.
Yeah.
We'll tell that story at a later time.
It's a good one.
But I know that I have a certain amount of bias around certain technologies because I don't have capacity or time to learn the new thing, right? And so I think about others in leadership space, and I think, okay, well, if they're not comfortable with it, then I know the question that they have is, how do I manage it if I'm not comfortable with it? I don't know the questions to ask, right? And so it's sort of, there's a big, I think, trust continuum that is created in that space a bit, is one of my takeaways. So go ahead, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add, historically, these large technology investments have not been, top of mind or even executed as strategies in a lot of human service organizations. So there's just a new mindset of just that decision making and understanding a return on investment from technology is not, it's not the same decision making factors that you might normally be used to in your director's room or your board room. So there's different skill levels you need to kind of equip your board and your directors with making these types of decisions too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think to your point, historically, human services world, I think about all the applications I've ever filled out for different things. We love paper. CAAP doesn't love paper, to be clear. We try to reduce as much paper as possible, but in general, right, like greater community, definitely there is a love for paper processes, which again, right, comes with a different burden of time, energy, and cost. Mm-hmm. So when you think about this in context, then what do you think people misunderstand the most about AI within this space?
I think there's some mindsets where people are worried about it taking their job. You know, there's, as you mentioned, there's in human services very paper heavy. And so it's individuals, whether it's paper or now they digitize that paper into a PDF file or whatever it might have been, there's still this manual work that's happening a lot of times. And they go, well, if this is automated or if AI can do this faster, where's my job really going to be? And it's truthfully, AI, there's still a lot of things it doesn't do well or doesn't do right. And there's just layers of human interaction that need to be involved. And so I say AI will augment our jobs. It certainly won't replace our jobs. We will have to learn new skills to utilize it. Managers of organizations will have to now learn how to manage people and perhaps AI agents together to get the most impact out of, their people and their technology or AI investments. So some of those, kind of misconceptions, really around the AI will do my job. I think there's, well, after you get past that, I think there's a lot of people that go, well, there's a lot of compliance concern because if I put in my files or if I start having it read the organization data, there's HIPAA concerns or PII or other, data compliance or privacy concerns. And while that is a good, I would, high five that individual, say kudos for bringing that up. That is a good concern. That is a control we need to take in place as we talk about our journey. But there are governance aspects that we can put in place with AI, whether it's during the build process of it or just organizational understanding on what AI is, isn't, and how it should or shouldn't be used in our organization. So there's ways to navigate all of this. And I think, the key point is we're not taking anything away from, what we do as a human service organization. We're enhancing what we can do. Notably, we see a lot of pressure to reduce, our administrative costs to make sure that for every dollar that the maximum, 99 plus cents are going to programmatic, outcomes or whatever, the right ratio is there. But AI is one of those levers we'll be able to pull to be able to make that happen.
Yeah. So in a former organization that Amanda and I used to work in that shall remain nameless, years and years ago, I led the integration of various technologies into a membership-based organization that covered 30 counties. And at the time, we had 30,000 plus members and then an additional 15,000 volunteers. And so up until that point, all registrations came through via paper. 3 different pieces, like carbon copy, right? Like top copy you keep, middle copy goes to another volunteer group, and then the organization keeps the bottom copy. And so we had literally hundreds of filing cabinets across 12 different offices that had every paper copy of everything that had ever been filled out in the history of the organization. And so suddenly then we're asking people to go online and fill out registration. And the fear that I saw, and then of course, what was started happening in the very beginning is that paper copies would get lost to get inputted into a database. And so people were then taking copies of forms. And then finally we got to a point where like the issues were solved, but people were still hanging on to the copies. So I've lived through the integration of really large technology systems like Salesforce into an organization that historically did not use technology. And I've lived to tell the tale. But what I saw in that experience, and my point of sharing that story, is that we ended up hiring more people long term in different capacities, right? So the same people that were in charge of like just entering forms, sure, those positions evolved, changed. They were around data compliance, right? But we spent then more money on the people then that were actually in the field supporting the volunteers and doing the programming side of the work. And that's really what I like in this too as well, in a lot of ways.
I'm going to pause to back up on one thing. First of all, can we just recognize Ryan's giving virtual high fives for data compliance as one of his main roles is cybersecurity, one of his day jobs,
Yes.
which I love, just saying, very important. But I think the other piece, and to your point, Beck, of like, we're talking a lot about compliance, a lot about some of those things that the conversation also naturally sort of goes to like the big buckets of generative and automation and implementing those things looks very, very different, but those are the most like recognizable implementations of AI. And that especially when we're talking automation, to your point, Beck, it is such a capacity builder. I will say like, my current position at WIPFLI, even in the, not having a very long tenure, my capacity has been a hundredfold gain by the way that we've been able to embrace utilizing AI and then, creatively utilizing it for our processes and automation. And I think that's the biggest impact. When I think of, I'm the big, Beck likes to dream big. Ryan's in compliance. I'm like the starry dreamer in the middle here. Bringing it all together is I think about those, especially in human services, starting my career in direct client service way back when is oftentimes I only got 20 hours a week in actual work with families because 20 hours a week were spent on filling out all case notes, filling out all forms, filling out all of these pieces with compliance, where if you could actually interact with the family and have a piece of technology that is, you're just asking questions and being able to pull that in, and it's going to give you those notes in a summary that then obviously need a touch. So like the capacity gain is, the things that put stars in my eyes in a lot of these things. And to your point, it gives me more higher ability, more opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and I also think about the way in which we manage in human services, and it's hard to know how effective somebody is unless you have a story. It's hard to weed through all of the data. And so I think about, from a management perspective, as something that I, coach and present on all the time, like to know how fast somebody is following up with somebody and whether or not they have capacity and seeing that in data analytics, to me, just changes the game in terms of how we can manage in this space as well. And very few organizations today are doing that in this space because the systems, it's not about, right, like not tracking outcomes. We track more outcomes than you can shake a stick at. It's more about the pace of follow-up, how effective somebody is, right? All of those things. So Ryan, for somebody who wants to start using AI tomorrow, and let's assume that they're at the very beginning of their learning journey here, right? Maybe they've not even heard the term ChatGPT. Maybe they have, I don't know. See enough commercials about it. And ChatGPT, if you're listening, feel free to sponsor the Thinking CAAP. But without disrupting anything, what's the simplest way to begin? What would you advise?
I think where a lot of people start and have early success was where I would tell everybody else to kind of start looking at it too, is in that individual productivity area. Have it start drafting emails or summarizing the long emails, because one thing people understand at WIPFLI about me is if you write a long email, I am not reading. Heck, I'm probably not reading your email anyways, but
yeah,
if you write a long one, I'm certainly not reading it.
2 paragraphs, that's all I've got in me.
Yeah, exactly. But so summarizing those longer emails when somebody writes you that book around whatever it is they have, are urged to tell you about that day, or when it's drafting up a communication for a particular stakeholder, like, hey, I want to write a donation letter, or I'm going to be meeting with this local elected official. Can you help me create a few talking points? And you start by doing that with with a tool like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, Claude is another one that I see a lot of organizations use. Perplexity is out there all over my Facebook and Instagram ads all the time too. All of them are good. Pick one. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. You'll start exploring others once you start seeing what you like and don't like about the one that you picked ultimately. And then that will kind of start getting your creative juices flowing on how you can use it more. And you'll start looking at, I need to provide a report about these 5 programs to my board member. Here's the 5 talking points I have, or here's even some of the Excel spreadsheets I have. Can you help me do this? And it'll create that narrative, to talk to the board member or some community stakeholder group or whatever that might be. And you'll start to go, well, it would take me 2 to 3 hours in the course of the day to do all these extra things that I had AI draft me. And so you want to start looking at, you don't need to track it any particular way. I do more of the, all right, yeah, that was about 2 to 3 hours today I saved using this. And you start adding that up over time. It's insane at what else you were able to get done during those 2 to 3 hours of, not that it wasn't high value work because you're talking to a board member or a local elected official or whatever it might be, but now you're able to actually get more focused time on solving that problem than just sorting through all your emails.
Yeah, and then you're able to focus on the things that matter for your job. You're not doing the administrative, because writing an email, whether you like to say it or not, it's administrative in nature, right?
It solves the blank page syndrome. It solves the, I do like to imagine the days where I was sitting in an office drinking my coffee, like, I have to write this email to the board members. And I know for myself, one of the biggest things is I also speak to AI like that. I will say, I'm stumped. Here are the things I need to do. How?
Yeah, I mean, the more prescriptive you are, right, the better the solution is that you get back. So if you need an email that is very specific in tone, that gets this message across, but not too complex, make sure it's at this reading level. Make sure you weave in this story or this point. By the way, I call this person this, right? Like the more prescriptive you are, the better your solution spits out, which I love. And you can keep telling it to rewrite it and add in this point and remove that point. One of the things that I've heard somebody say, it might have been Georgia, our chief strategy officer. I can't remember who it was, but when you get a notice of funding opportunity and it's 1,000 pages, drop it in ChatGPT and say, please summarize these particular points so that I can best determine whether or not our organization is able to apply. Genius, right? I mean, it's a lot, just the comprehension that it takes to do some of this work, to simplify that. Yep. Holy moly.
Translates legalese in.
Right. Yeah, because you start reading those NOFOs and you're like, what did it say now? Like, all right, you go back and you read that paragraph 3 times. You're like, is that me?
And you're 75 pages in at this point, right? Yeah. And by the way, the turnaround on those funding opportunities sometimes are like, it could be 2 months, it could be a week. It depends. So if you can save the time.
And then you have to get various directors involved. You need your development team, or who assumes the responsibility of some of that, what development team is, if you don't have that in your organization. And we know with busy schedules, especially with nonprofit organizations over the last year, all the other battles they've been fighting, get that group together to focus on that, that proposal that they're going to write is not easy. So having a quick, hey, let me understand the key points of this, and then maybe even help you draft, that proposal. Not that you would rely on it, copy, paste, send, but I always like to say it's a drafting tool. It helps, as Amanda said, get rid of that blank page, and now you're able to start going in and adding to it, or saying, that's not exactly accurate. Let me put my actual organization's bio in here that's more up to date, whatever it might be. But you're saving just hours upon hours upon hours just with something as simple as NOFOs and grant writing.
Yeah. Recently, we put a proposal in for a project, and we had the scoring criteria So I said, right, like, here's the scoring criteria, here's the proposal, score this based on these things, assuming no one knows anything about your organization. And so it gave me an editing opportunity to go back and refine what I had proposed. And it had already gone through multiple iterations at that point of people and, rewrites of different things. But that was incredibly helpful and not something I had done before. A lot of times, because simply there is no scoring criteria that is shared. Any other tactical examples of other tools? Let's think about maybe some of the more, getting to the folks who maybe, they feel like they've maximized ChatGPT and some of those tools, and we start to creep into kind of the middle, more comfortable folks. Any other tactical examples that you care to share?
One of my favorite ones, again, we talked about emails, and I do get to the benefit of traveling and going to various conferences, whether it's the CAAP conference. I'll be going to a community action conference next week where I'll be speaking on AI here too. And I just can't keep up with my emails when I'm out at those conferences. I come back and there's several hundred more emails to go through and parse through and try to prioritize and respond. And so one of my favorite tools is Microsoft 365 Copilot. And it integrates with Outlook. So when I'm in there, I can prompt it to read all my unread emails and prioritize them for me. And then even, are there any I need to follow up with, the next 24 hours or whatever that time frame is. And it will spit up all of this, like, here are the 30 emails you got to get to today. I'm like, oh, great. And then I can even prompt it, though, can you draft a response to these 30 emails? I might not like all 30 drafts of that, but hey, I started the draft and can confirm whether this is good or not and click send later. But that helps me tremendously from, the administrative level. That's kind of like that next level up than just, a prompt and getting an output and copy and pasting it somewhere, which I kind of think a lot of people do with, ChatGPT at first. The whole Microsoft 365 Copilot integrates with Word and Excel and PowerPoint and several other apps inside of Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So if you're an organization that uses Microsoft 365 for email or file storage or all the other things that it can do, Microsoft 365 Copilot is probably a quick add-on for you. There are some free versions where it's just Microsoft Copilot, which is chat-based, much like ChatGPT. Microsoft 365 Copilot, slightly different variation in the name there, but leave it up to Microsoft to make licensing confusing. That's what they do. But that at, the $20, $30 a month that it costs you, again, we are talking about saving 2 to 3 hours. I mean, people will pay that, to get that functionality alone. So whether it's drafting PowerPoint slides, creating Word documents, trying to figure out how to create a pivot table in Microsoft Excel, like all that stuff can, AI helps with in that Microsoft 365 Copilot space. That's pretty slick.
Yeah. I think so much about, I was just having a conversation with somebody about this the other day. When I graduated college, I had never used Excel. There was no reason for me to ever use Excel in college. It just wasn't
English majors.
Right. I mean, I was in humanities, English, humanities, whatever my degree is in. And it was my very first job, and I had to do all of this budgeting work. And so I had to go to a community college and take an Excel class because it was a different time, right? Like Google just wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it was, and I just
now his pop-uppers are showing.
That's how old I am, right? I know. Although I was on a call this morning with a guy, and he's like, "You certainly can't be older than I am," and I was significantly older. So thank you very much. Still gonna get some Botox soon. But I think about how much time I spent trying to figure out how to do stuff.
Yeah.
In a world now where it's just like, right, I can Google it, or I can just tell my computer, please go do this for me.
And not to give another, not to give another email example, but like literally yesterday, we're looking, ahead at the WIPFLI conference in July. And we're going through some selection processes for some of our, speakers. And I had suggestions sent to me all year. And I was able to say, look for anything that has the keywords of XYZ for Stronger to Serve, plop that into an Excel. Please give me an example of work. Give me, like all of these things. And then my output is this beautiful Excel with all the things that would have taken me a day. Like, putting all of those things into a folder, like check out this folder in my email and then put all of this into a digestible PowerPoint. I do that constantly. Like, hey, everyone send me your ideas for XYZ. I just create a rule, put it in a folder. And then when I'm ready or when I need that output, Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's just seamless in being able to do that. That is probably the AI tool I use absolutely above all else.
I've got, examples of like more specific to the community action space. I was just speaking to actually two CEOs in the last day now, and one was talking about how they used to spend all this time drafting, board content for their board meetings, and they'll draft the narrative to particular things for the board, and the board does not they're like, hey, this is efficient. Actually, you're putting it into bullet points for us. We'd rather read bullet points than paragraphs. And so she's been, excited about, doing that. And she's like, it saves me 3-4 hours a month just doing that, let alone all the other things that I'm using with it.
Yeah. We're piloting, sorry, I'm going to cut you off. We're piloting right now a software to do our own board work. And one of the, some of the tools that are in there, it's, using AI to summarize a P&L. Here are the things that you need to pay attention to. And now suddenly, the finance notes are far more simplistic and take far less time. There's also, mechanics in there to take votes ahead of time so things can move to a consent agenda without anybody ever having to talk, right? Like there's lots of examples of that type of software out there. But that I think is particularly those agencies who are meeting on a monthly basis. I say this all the time that, in theory then, or in practice, not even in theory, in reality, they are spending literally almost every single waking day preparing for a board meeting, collecting all this information. And so that's all they end up doing. And that executive director then is exhausted, as is their board, by the way, which probably decreases engagement in a lot of instances, because then all they're doing is sitting in board meetings and reviewing committee notes. And there's not enough time to do the work, which is a whole other conversation and soapbox that I can get on. But anyway, I think those types of streamlining that's again, I think to me kind of some of the bare bones that I'm hopeful that people will start to take advantage of. Were you going to share another example, Ryan?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of just from the HR space, people drafting and manuals for HR manuals or employee handbooks, policies, procedures, types of things. Now, obviously, you still want to get those reviewed, make sure they abide by local laws and all of that stuff too. Again, AI as a drafting tool, not as the end all be all there. And then a lot of program directors, there's tons of news going on out there about various programs and funding and perhaps different compliance things that might change. And so I've seen some program directors actually go out there, look at what's whatever the new federal guidance might be on a particular program, and then just say what changed from this version to this version. So they're only looking at the changes versus having to consume, the entire document. So some real world examples, perhaps for human service organizations that they might be able to pick up on.
I know my wife's organization, she runs a housing organization. She was on the podcast with Amanda, as a matter of fact, a few episodes ago. She runs an organization. She runs an organization called Echoes. And they put in place, they found that she sort of was observing their intake process and trying to follow up on calls. And what she was seeing was that to get back to somebody who was just scheduling an appointment was taking a significant amount of time. And they're a small team. They have, maybe 5 people, but their specific client facing team, there's only 2 or 3 of them on a good day. And so they just put in a simple form schedule, right, for people to be able to self-schedule based off of availability. And now that's cut down on the callback time, and the team isn't playing phone tag for hours on end on any given day. They're able to actually come into work and already have their appointment scheduled. They might have to follow up to confirm, but there's also, systems in place to be able to do that as well. And so that, for an organization that is, just over $1 million in a small team, that has reduced pretty dramatically something as simple as the follow-up. Because the other thing is, and I think this is important for human services folks to think about, is that the clients that the participants of the folks that you're serving, they're working they're working maybe 1, 2, 3 jobs. Their availability may not match up with your organizational availability. And so right away, while I appreciate you kind of going back to one of your original points, Ryan, that people may feel like you're losing this human approach or human-centered approach, I would argue that it also increases your human-centered approach, because now you're creating availability opportunity following, right? Like after you're closed, when people that may be the only time that they have to set up the meeting.
Exactly. You're constantly trying to find out new ways to meet people where they're at, right? And so somebody has a need at 3 a.m. Maybe the chatbot is their best available option to navigate some sort of crisis that they're in. Sign up for a program so, when you are open, that they can, bring their child into the Head Start Center or whatever, they need assistance with. And we really are seeing, a movement towards all of the things that we consume as an individual in our lives. We want to click a button and it shows up at our doorstep in 2 days, right? That's how the world is starting to work, or not even starting. That's really the expectation with a lot of things too. So when I have a need for a rental assistance check, or to help pay my utility bills, or whatever, that situation might be, you didn't help me within 48 hours, maybe even a week. And now you've created more burden on me, as a perception, right? And there's, the various poverty simulation trainings you can go through. I think many of our organizations, or even listeners here, have probably gone or seen or heard through those. It's like you're just adding layers onto that when you can't serve somebody. So now you've added to their problem versus actually helping them navigate the problem. And so AI, there's a human component to what you're doing for sure. But, AI can help you meet those individuals where they're at more consistently.
Yeah. And it just it eliminates barriers, right? It eliminates barriers that we can't eliminate just because of capacity. And, while there is some argument on like AI hallucinations and things and biases it can build, it also sort of eliminates biases, right? Like of the opportunity that you're just, especially for a data input or a scheduler or what that is, whether that is someone who, if it was a traditional call intake, and I'm so hard of hearing right now, my volume's up so bad, but like, so if it's, you get me on the phone and I can't hear what you're saying to repeat over and over what that looks like. And all of our phones and technology now have like preemptive text and being able to fill out simple chatbot scheduling forms when it's asking your name. It's going to preemptively put my name and reduce. It just continues to eliminate barriers. 100%.
Languages, different reading levels,
right.
Whatever you need to get to meet that population that you serve. It certainly helps. And I work with an organization that serves, they've got it documented. They serve individuals that speak 17 different languages. They have 2 that they've used to, English and Spanish, that they've had most of their forms in, and now they've got forms in every single language.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
So exciting.
Since you touched on this a little bit, let's talk a little bit about some kind of the risk issue and sort of the not compliance, but more so I would say sort of navigating the risk and being thoughtful about the risk. And so when you think about the guardrails that really matter when introducing AI into an organization who maybe has not really implemented it yet. Now, my guess is there's probably somebody in the organization that's using it. You just don't know. And so what are the guardrails that really matter that organizational leadership needs to start to think about?
Yeah, first thing is, I guarantee you that people are using AI in your organization, and you just you might not know about it. So you want to start establishing what AI is and isn't and what it can be used for in your organization. Just like you probably have some of that already, or I hope you have some of that in some sort of acceptable use policy when it comes to technology in your organization. Hey, you have the internet as a tool to do your job, but we don't want you on there posting on social media and shopping the whole day. You're supposed to use it for productivity, right? And so the same thing from an AI perspective. AI is just another tool. It's just so transformative that we're giving it all this press and all this hype, which rightfully so. But we want to treat it just like we have treated a lot of the other technologies in our organization. And if you don't have an acceptable use policy, you don't have an AI governance policy, guess what? You can ask, your favorite AI tool to help you draft one, or you can reach out to me, and I can help tell you what you should or shouldn't have in a lot of those policies there too. But that's one of the things that I think a lot of organizations don't want to start with. The conversation of AI governance isn't as handsome as like, hey, look at all the cool things that we can do with it. But that is key to at least establishing how AI can and cannot be used in your organization. And then some organizations even take it a little bit further. Here are the AI tools that are acceptable to be used for these particular things. And it just kind of establishes that governance policy that really is going to help, make sure that people aren't going outside the box, causing additional risks by putting potential HIPAA information on a public, AI model of some sort that then sits there, and that AI model learns from that information. It's not gonna share that I had surgery last week on a certain but it's going to at least share. It's going to learn from all of that data and then use that as part of its response, perhaps down the road. And you don't want to be in that. There's data privacy concerns that your organization, especially some of the states, have stricter guidelines around data privacy that you don't want to get involved in as a nonprofit. You want to be in the news for the right things, not that.
Right.
You've lost somebody's data.
Yeah. The good impact, not the unfortunate part. Yeah.
So that's one of the key risks I see, is just not putting that time up front on that piece.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think having worked in human services and operations for a long time and working in large networked organizations, I think what often has happened is that the risk and the policy comes following an incident. And then so it sort of becomes a knee-jerk reaction, which becomes more restrictive. And so I think, best advice here is, again, you have, whether you want to admit it or not, you have somebody in your team that's using some type of AI in some way. And so setting the policy now that reduces risk, is thoughtful about risk, and isn't the knee-jerk based on something happening, and not, maybe having what feels like capacity to work through the problem in the policy is, I think, really important, for sure. So as we get to a close here, Amanda, any questions you want to ask? I have probably two more in the tank here, but if you have any in particular that are burning, I want to make sure to give you the chance to ask.
Oh my gosh. No, circle back around. I'll think of a couple.
Okay. So Ryan, when you think about the potential in human services to utilize AI when it's done thoughtfully, ethically, right, mitigating risk concerns, what excites you the most about it? Anything in particular, like
I go to
this?
Yeah. Every leader I've talked to in the last year, every conference I've gone to in the last year, all of them have mentioned burnout. I've got staff turnover. They can't continue to keep up at this pace. They can't, all of these, various outside influences adding pressure to my organization that are making it difficult to continue serving the community. I can't, I've got, just had talked to another director this morning, and I have 90 some positions that are open for my organization. How am I supposed to fill those? And I think AI, it's not going to be the end all to, like, I'm not just going to say, hey, you build this AI tool and those 99 positions that you have open are go filled because AI is doing it. But I think it helps us reframe our work to make sure that we are putting in, the highest impact possible to deliver those outcomes. So then, you don't leave work at the end of the day thinking like, well, I didn't get anything done. I didn't help anybody. And all I got was more paperwork on top of this. And so I think AI can certainly help reduce, I don't mean it by replace jobs, but reduce the number of individuals to really create a great impact, in the community. I think that's going to be a huge thing there too. And then whether we really like it or not, we've seen some changes in how, how nonprofits, specifically federally funded nonprofits, are viewed in the last year, and even more notably in recent news with around, transparency and accountability with funding. And I think if we can layer in AI to really showcase, real-time impact that we're providing to whatever stakeholder it is, whether it's our local community, the funding source itself, the states themselves, and a lot of them help develop these state plans on how this funding is going to go through. If we can showcase that in a lot more real time or closer to real time impacts, we're going to look amazing. Like, whoa, look at the things that we're able to do with $100 and what it goes for, to serving however many families, and look at these outcomes they provide. And that's really going to start moving the needle, I think, with how we really start making impact in our community and closing this poverty gap, or whatever your mission might be for your organization. This will start to happen, maybe not automatically for us, but it'll start giving us a little bit more of an easy button to push once we develop that. So those are the things that, super excite me, is kind of solving that burnout problem and then showcasing, what our organizations really do, and not keeping it, the best kept secret anymore, or, being in the news for the wrong reason, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, for sure. Amanda, were you going to say something?
I mean, you know how easy it is for me to get excited, but I think what really, I found a sparkle in when you said burnout, right? Because I think the other thing is that, just that exhaustive nature of human service work, right? It takes a lot of empathy. You shoulder so much emotion. It's why I knew, 1 year into direct service, it was burnout. It is, if it can organize your notes better, give you the to-do list, or workflow automations that are going to trigger if I'm a Head Start teacher just by marking who is present and who is absent, it's going to keep me in compliance of so-and-so missed 3 days, and it's going to automatically trigger a workflow to their case manager. Like the little things that take you away from the work in that moment, that are the things that stress and burn you out. Like, oh, I got to remember to call so-and-so and note this, and I need to check, I need to check these 5 different things, especially in settings where it's, like Head Start or like direct service, in any program where you just want to be present, and your effectiveness to be present is what someone needs at that moment. It can sort of start eliminating and shedding those pieces so that burnout doesn't feel the same. And, everyone needs an emotional break, but it starts to take those stressors away in a way that I think it just, to your point, Ryan, it's incorporated right into the job now. And, those kind of investments in technology and seeing those use cases in AI have been really, really rewarding in my short time at WIPFLI, I'll say.
Yeah. I think 1,000% over. It's the amount of emotional, physical burnout, the number of people who I know have had major health issues. Heck, the number of people I know who have passed away in the last year and a half it just feels different. And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older that I'm looking at it differently, But I also think that there is just something different in the nature of the work in the last few years that just is all adding to this. And I think anything that helps to reduce that burden is incredibly important for sure. And I say this, I've said this a couple times to people, is that at the end of the day, the number of people who need help and support is going to continue to increase. Yeah, unfortunately, because there's just shifting systems right now. And so we're going to see outcomes that we don't even know based off a change of one thing into the next thing. And this is not a political statement, to be clear. It is just simply, I think, a point of fact that we will see a difference in the types of services we need, the types of things that people are going to need, and we're going to see more people that need help. And so our ability to serve those people is reliant on resources, which there are fewer of, and us to run more effectively and efficiently. And I truly feel like the only way that that's going to happen is if we think about how to use these tools in the best way possible. And again, to your point, Ryan, right, make sure that we reduce risk so that we're not seen in the news for the unfortunate things, but instead the good things. All right, last question, because we're coming up on time here. Any shameless plugs that either one of you wants to make about WIPFLI, personal or otherwise?
I mean, hot seat, Ryan, favorite coworker. No, just kidding. But really, no. I mean, I am, I won't give my general marketing spiel since this is the CAAP audience. And as Pennsylvania's former darling, I think if you have, I'm going to make Ryan blush a little too. If you have a question, I would say reach out to Ryan and the team. Honestly, it's been so fortunate to work with such incredibly thoughtful folks at WIPFLI, and that truly no question is a stupid question. If it's down to like the tiny minutia, it's probably, or if it's something that our team hasn't thought about, they'll work it through, because everyone's, application, especially around technology, has to be so nuanced. So I would just, if you just have a question, it's easy to find any of us. But I can at least route you to Ryan to get the answer.
Well, and if you can't find them, feel free to email us at info@thecaap.org, and we're happy to connect you to the powers that be at WIPFLI, Ryan, Amanda, and otherwise. Ryan, any shameless plugs?
I'll just say, as much as we focus, on AI here today, it still gets back to your mission, and it's really serving the individuals in your community. And I understand AI can't serve, the people in your community. That's you and the rest of your organization that can do that. But I really think if your organization is willing to build an AI strategy, it's going to give you more time, more energy to actually go and serve the community the way that you desire to do so. And I think that's worth exploring for any organization. And if any organization does want to explore that, go ahead, reach out. I mean, we're willing to help you do so.
And I'll just put in a final shameless plug for CAAP, which is that we have like I said before, we have our summit coming up in the spring. It will be a large focus on AI in particular. That'll be hosted this year in Harrisburg at the Best Western Premiere. We'll be sharing dates, times, speakers, all of those things soon. So for our listeners, stay tuned. We'll tell you more as soon as we have the more figured out. And appreciate everybody listening. Ryan and Amanda, thank you for joining. Amanda, thanks for co-hosting today. Always good to see you both. And thanks for spending a little time putting on your thinking caps.
Yes, thank you very much.
Catch everybody
next
time.
Thanks for having. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of this episode of the Thinking CAAP. Check the show notes for resources and links to other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and follow to be notified when new episodes are released. If you have any community action questions you'd like Beck or one of our local experts to answer in a future episode, please email your questions about community action to info@thecaap.org. Subject line, Thinking CAAP.